Hello everyone, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank for Who Reviews, and today we're going to talk about episode 3 of season 11, Rosa. So, this episode is apparently the coolest thing to hit the show since the TARDIS, and I felt it was alright. To be fair, most of this episode I liked, but certain elements of the episode itself felt either dull or totally missed the mark, so let's just sort of go into that. So, the setting and time period honestly looked great, but it is very subtle trying to communicate a point, and that point is in 1955, white people are all racist, and this doesn't work from a historical concept. It's a bit historically dishonest. I think the episode sort of fails to show any real weight or nuance. Everyone has the same perspective in this town. Compare this to historicals like, say, the Marian Conspiracy or the Settling, and you would notice a stark contrast between how history can be portrayed. Namely, let's look at the Marian Conspiracy. So in that one, Dr. Evelyn Smythe thinks that everyone is against the heresy laws that are coming, which is, anyone who's not Catholic will be burned at the stake. And then it turns out that, well, no, they all agree that, hey, we being burned for heresy is fine, but we aren't the heretics. That, to me, I felt was really an interesting way to sort of view that, and even Queen Mary herself is viewed as a more layered and interesting person as opposed to just this crazy woman who burned people. This story itself, it's sort of set on making you feel one set of tone when a more nuanced approach would have been necessary. A good example being the scene at the restaurant. Having the waitresses be more uncomfortable and nervous shows not only the prejudice, but also the fact that any form of difference of opinion isn't welcome here. In other words, the waitress is sort of forced to say, hey, you can't be here, my manager says you can't be here, and I can't lose this job. That's sort of it. And maybe it's a sort of, you would say it's sort of like, playing it a bit too safe, but I think that shows more of the weight of the town, that, you can't think differently. If you think differently, there's going to be trouble. Ryan and Yaz themselves have little to do per se, their best moment being when they talk to each other in the motel. This story felt a bit underdone, in that it feels like the episode Abominations in DC's Legends of Tomorrow, where Jefferson, or Jax, he thinks he knows how to deal with racist people because he lived in modern-day America, as it goes into Civil War America at a plantation owner's cotillion. The scene where Ryan tries to hand a woman her glove and Jefferson bumping into a woman are almost the same scene, but the problem is Ryan afterwards seems to have no real scope of where he is or the potential danger, even after hearing about Emmett Till. In a lot of ways, Ryan and Yaz sort of take the approach of James and Sarah in Liberty's Kids. In other words, what they should be doing is interacting with these people in history, and we should be seeing their interactions. We see Ryan being awestruck by Martin Luther King, and we see Yaz hear about Rosa Parks' life, and while these are great, they don't really have the same sort of weight, primarily because it feels like Ryan and Yaz almost, like, not entirely, feel like what was happening in 1955 is the same as what they said they were going through. And that honestly isn't true, but that's besides the point. It's not something they're overtly trying to say. Where I think with Jefferson, that was a bit more interesting, the fact we realized, like, there's a total difference here. Rosa Parks herself was great. Finette Robinson was brilliant. Oh, beautiful performance. She does a great job showing a woman who isn't just an ideal. She felt like a real person. The only problem was with the story surrounding her. Rosa Parks was a member of the NAACP, but little is done to show it. No mention of the other people who were arrested for not giving up their seat. No mention of her husband outside of his first introduction. And that is sort of, I think, a bit of a mistake, because historically Raymond was one of the reasons she got into activism, as well as supporting her going back to school. Instead of creating a universe around Rosa that she has to interact with, we're sort of creating a world where we're just meeting Rosa and everyone else is sort of a background character. Even the own little story she gives to Yaz when she's working on the doctor's coat feels more like a little blurb, when we could have probably gone a bit further about, how she met Dr. King, how she got involved in activism, because she was involved in all of that. The biggest problem here overall was, in my opinion, the addition of new villain Krasko, who ultimately was nothing more than, I guess, a white supremacist in the future. Krasko all but says that he thinks the end of segregation was a bad thing, and that's kind of it. If the idea going on is that he's apparently the meddling monk who was a Time Lord who was introduced in Season 2 of the Classic Era, he just likes to go around and mess with history, then why add that aspect to his character? The Doctor should instantly recognize the monk, because the Doctor has pointed out that Time Lords can always recognize each other. Until the end of the episode, that bus scene, which made most of the episode worth it, Krasko was more of a mystery than a character, and I think the episode could have been better suited without him, using those moments instead to be moments better focused on who Rosa is, instead of getting the audience interested in just those final moments. Because that is effectively what everyone's doing. We're all watching Rosa and we're waiting for the moment on the bus. Like, the beginning is a clever fake out. We think this is the moment, and then something was wrong with history. It turns out this historically was the day before. So honestly, I think the best character here that wasn't Rosa was Graham. Bradley Walsh, he pretty much acts circles around just about everyone here, and I think it's just how he's placed within the story, especially when how we see how uncomfortable he is, and having to be one of the people on the bus who contributes to Rosa's arrest, and the fact that, they have to stay on the bus the whole time and be one of the reasons why James Banks has to go and tell Rosa to get up, even though they don't need to be on the bus. Rosa, I think, rides on the emotions it evokes over the story itself, and while there are some good moments, I did feel like the episode took more of a glorification of history as opposed to really telling the story. Rosa Parks was courageous, and a lot of what she does is a great moment of heroism, but it's also because she's tired, not just physically tired, but of everything going on around her. She knew about the other people that were arrested on the bus. She knew about Emmett Till. She knew about all of it going on, and that day was just, she was done, and she didn't get up. It was a great moment, but we sort of over-glorified it, I think, at least in my opinion. But again, the parts with Rosa and the bus were the strongest parts of this episode, but it felt the substance around it was just sort of lacking, for me at least. With that in mind, we'll bring this episode to a close. If you're new to the Bucket Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Check out some other videos on this channel, and I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Tank signing off. May your fandom serve you well.